Good morning. This is the Blainsville podcast where conversations are worth hearing and seeing. You can watch each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And for more information on past episodes, future episodes as well, I guess you can look at our website, which is behind me, blainsworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm coming to you here from my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we share positive news and uh, uplifting stories about people and organizations in Western North Carolina and across the country. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Steve Woodsmall, a retired USAF major, business leader, professor, and author, being my guest today. And Steve, feel free to wave to all you fans and friends who are watching this on YouTube.
Okay, hey
Doing
guys, thanks
good.
for having me.
Okay, that's Steve. Steve had served in the U.S. Air Force with the rank of major. Following his retirement with the military, he held positions at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, Federal Aviation Administration, several corporate leadership positions, and taught at several colleges and universities, including Brevard College, not too far from here. He's also the author of Beats Eating Lizards: Lessons Learned in Life and Leadership. And I gotta say, I love that title, one of the great titles of all time. See, the question I always ask first time I meet somebody is, as a kid, you grew up where?
Southern Indiana on the farm.
Okay, and as a kid growing up in southern Indiana on the farm, did you always know you wanted to be in the military?
No, I I always had a lot of respect for the military, and I know I graduated from high school in '74, and I always remember pretty clearly going to the high school basketball games and hearing the national anthem, and many times actually sung the national anthem myself because I was a music guy in high school. Um,
But
I
I'm not going to ask you to sing it now.
no, you don't want to hear that right now. My
Okay.
voice has changed significantly in the last 100 years, but um, I always thought about the guys that were close to my age that were in Vietnam at the time, and some of them from locally in southern Indiana. In fact, I had a distant cousin that died in Vietnam and is buried there in my hometown. But I always had kind of this patriotic feeling about that and how lucky we were that we had the freedom to go to a basketball game, and we had guys over there not much older than me that were putting their lives at risk every day, and just always had a kind of a affinity for the military. Never really thought about joining, but I did. I happened to run into several older folks at the time who had been in the military, and I knew I had to get out of Southern Indiana because it's basically Southern Indiana is very rural, not much money there, pretty much cornfields and a couple churches and a couple taverns, small towns. And or as I tell people sometimes, where the houses are on wheels and the cars are on blocks.
Okay.
So the town marshal at the time happened to be was an ex Air Force guy, and everybody I talked to that didn't retire from the military but had served all told me the same thing, and that is, I wish I'd have stayed in to retire. I would have been retired for 5 years now, or I would have been retired for 7 years now. I should have stayed in, and that kind of piqued my interest. So I narrowed it down. I said I might try that. I might go in for 4 years, serve the country, get a little bit of experience, and then figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And ended up picking the Air Force, basically because I didn't want to spend 8 or 9 months on a boat.
Okay.
And just ended up doing really well. Got promoted early, worked for some really great people. I enlisted in 1975, worked for some really great people, started my degree, finished my bachelor's degree in 4 years, and went to officer training school, got commissioned, and then subsequently retired in 93 as a major. So it was really good to me. I had a lot of great jobs, worked for a lot of great people, had a couple bad jobs, worked for a couple bad people. But, as I always told my management students, you can learn a lot from great leaders. You can learn a lot from really bad managers as well. So a lot of good experiences there, and got a chance to travel, spent a year in Turkey, did a lot of training development, trained officers for 4 years at the officer training school. My boss there for a period of time was the only Medal of Honor recipient, still on active duty in the Air Force, and was a golf buddy of mine. And you just got the opportunity to meet some just incredible people and learn a lot, and got a lot of support along the way, and was able to retire uh, as a major and figure out what I want. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I'm a little bit closer to that now.
So how long were you in the service?
A little over 18 years. They were doing 15-year retirements at that time, and I was kind of burned out and ready to go, and couldn't get promoted for another 2 years anyway. So decided to go ahead and take the retirement, and I've been in a little over 18 years.
Now you were in the service, I guess, a little after I went to school. Were you involved in combat at all?
No, I went in right at the tail end of Vietnam.
I was going to say, wow.
Served during the Gulf War and all that, but never went.
So talk to me a little bit about, since you raised the issue. So I just read now they just changed now the was it registration requirement to be in the I mean, you still have to register for the draft, but now it's automatic. Or what happened just recently on that?
Yeah, apparently they're automatically registering people now,
But
which
they weren't doing that before?
well, they weren't, and it was all volunteer force for a long time. Um, and I don't know all the ins and outs in terms of what's going on behind the scenes, but I can tell you, and I've been saying this for a long time, ever since the current administration took over and basically hired an alcoholic Secretary of Defense,
Okay.
who's he's firing the people that don't agree with him, which is very dangerous. And the culture in the military is very tenuous right now. And I predicted at the time they'd have big recruiting problems, and they are clearly because. And I've had a lot of younger people, that know I'm former military, ask me about military service, and I said, it was probably one of the best things I ever did. But under the circumstances today, I wouldn't recommend it. It's too volatile. There's no leadership really to speak of. There's no clear mission. You see what's going on in Iran. It's just really horrible, and I feel bad for the folks that are on active duty now and trying to deal with that, because it's got to be very difficult.
I was surprised when I read about it though. So it's still just for guys though, right? That I'm surprised that there wasn't more upset about that women don't have to register. They still don't. Yet they fought for the right to be able to be in the service. It just seemed a little incongruous.
It's ridiculous, and I will tell you. And again, this administration is misogynistic too, as is headset. And they've taken down pictures of black people and female service people. And one of the problems with that is it's not fair to the female military people, because particularly in the Army and the Marines, one of the qualifications they look at for promotion is combat time and that sort of thing, and they don't get the opportunity to do that. So it's really a flawed system, and there are some senior female military officers now, but I don't think you'll see that happen as long as the current administration is in place, because they don't want those folks in there.
The scary thing to me, and I didn't read a lot about it, but when I saw it initially, is the fact that do you think this could lead to being a more active draft or more active call-ups, or we're going to be getting people involved?
I have no idea, Blaine. It's so uncertain, and they're so back and forth. They don't have a consistent policy. They don't have a clear vision. He'll say one thing tomorrow and then say something different the next day. You can't predict what's going on, and everybody's like, we're trying to figure out what he's thinking, and my answer is I think the problem is he doesn't know what he's thinking. So there's no way in hell you can know that, because he didn't even know what he's talking about. He went after the Pope.
Yeah, I saw that.
Who goes after the Pope?
Same thing. And then I just read something just before we got on the air here too. Saying the Pope, in terms of is not is soft on crime. I don't expect the Pope to be on crime. It's just like I couldn't believe that comment though.
No, he's insane. There's just mentally ill, clearly.
But how do you really feel? No, we won't get into that, Steve. A discussion at another time. But talk to me then back to when you were in the service. it was you were involved in what was it, Leadership Development Institute? What was that all about?
That's current. That's I'm on a board of an
Oh,
organization that a previous colleague of mine from a college faculty started a not for profit called Leadership Development Institute, and it's in the early stages now. But I'm on that board, and we're looking at the primary focus there is trying to get leadership development type things into uh, the younger generation, like maybe high school classes and that sort of thing, because leadership is critical. There's a lot of popular contemporary leadership stuff out there, and not a lot of it's based on scholarly research or sound practice. It's just somebody. I get so frustrated on LinkedIn. People post most leaders know how, according to who. Where's the research on that? You just they make stuff up. They spout off all this stuff. They have no idea what they're talking about, and so we're trying to come up with a way to get that type of leadership awareness down at the younger ages, so they can start building on that earlier. Because there's a lot of education involved in that, but there's also a lot of practical experience, and we'd like people at the younger ages to be able to start using those sorts of things. Aside from what they some of them learn in participating in athletics, for example, how to be on a team, how to lead your teammates, how to communicate, that sort of thing, how to be dedicated and put in the time and so on. But what we are going to talk about is more based on what's in the research, and not what just somebody wrote a book about because they felt like it. And it's not necessarily based on any scholarly research.
now is this going to be a national thing, or is it becoming a national thing?
Well, it's going to be international because my colleague has a lot of contacts in the Middle East, and we're trying to get it started over there as well. He's in California, and then we've got another board member, I think, who's in, I want to say India, and just getting started trying to get the word out here. But it's been a little bit of a slow process because there's a lot of leadership development stuff out there, and some of it's good, some of it's not. But the market's inundated with that stuff, so we have to really make sure that we can distinguish ourselves from a lot of those different places, because we're basing it on academic stuff and not just popular contemporary. Somebody wrote a book or somebody said this, and there's nothing to back it up.
What do you see as the age? What's the age range of this?
Well, we'd like to go to high school on up,
Okay.
but we'll see what happens.
Because there's a group, I don't know, you might be familiar with it, which I went through, but much later age, Leadership Asheville. Are you familiar with Leadership Asheville? And it was a great group. But again, you're right that even though I had that, I hadn't had a lot of leadership experience or training. I guess what it is, see, people just fall into it kind of thing, and all of a sudden you're a leader. You're told you're a leader, but don't have any way to prepare for it.
Yeah, that happens a lot, and one of the common things that you see in the business world is there'll be an opening for a managerial position or a leadership position, and let's say you have a group, I don't know, I'll just make computer programmers, let's say, and now we need a supervisor or a manager for this group of computer programmers. Who are they going to pick? They're going to pick their best computer programmer
So when I say that, yeah.
because they earned it. Yeah, but being a computer programmer, being a manager, two separate and distinct jobs. So your best computer programmer may not be your best manager. So you need to look for people that are qualified and have the skill set to do the management job. Because if this person doesn't, you promote them, you promote your best computer programmer, make them a manager. Now, guess what? You've lost your best computer programmer and you've hired a manager that's probably not going to be very competent. And now you've kind of messed yourself up on two different fronts.
Well, it's funny you said that because it reminds me of one of my favorite management principles. And I'm sure you're aware of the Peter principle,
Oh,
and the
yes,
idea. But just what you're saying, and it happened in any field. I have an educational background. I was a college professor. And just what you said, people get promoted. They may be a great teacher, and
exactly.
they're happy with it. They're terrible administrators. they don't want to be administrators, but they get promoted to it, you know.
It
So
happened at Brevard College when I was there. It
did
happened before I got there, but I felt the impact of that because they had a couple of people, one in particular, who was put in an administrative position and was totally not qualified or competent, and you could tell. And it got to the point where, I taught a lot of my PhDs in organization management, so I kind of know a little bit about that.
right.
Um, but I would teach classes on leadership or management or systems or budget, all that sort of stuff. And the question would always come up when we talked about these 101, 202 level concepts. My students would ask me, but Dr. Woodsmall, why don't they do it that way here? I don't know. They should be doing it that way. And that's why they're in the shape they're in, because they're not doing it this way. And the prevailing philosophy was, and I heard this from a dean, that the normal rules of management don't apply in academia.
Well,
I said,
I love it.
there you have the answer.
The follow-up book was very good too. Peter wrote a book, The Peter Prescription. And Peter Prescription said, in essence, you don't have to go to the next level. If you're happy where you are, stay there. But
Yes.
but just
Yes.
most people have to go to the next level or think that they want to go there. And you're so right about academia. I won't get into that whole thing, but yeah, a lot of people, first of all, shouldn't be in academia, and then running academia is just even more incredible than that. So Steve, let's update it then. So you were in the service through the 90s. You get out of the service. What did you do next?
Um, what did I do next? I worked for about 3.5 years. I worked as a contractor for the FAA, and we did leadership and management development. They had a school in Palm Coast, Florida, for managers and senior executives on the kinds of things that we just talked about: systems, leadership, management, those sorts of things. So did that for about 3.5 years. I did that at the SEC in Washington for about a year, training new SEC examiners. Taught for several colleges online, taught in an MBA program, and then I ran the business and organizational leadership program at Brevard College for about 3.5 years. So it was in academia.
Are you still in that? Are you still teaching at all?
No.
Okay. Then talk about also during that time too. You then, I guess, wrote your first book, your only book so far. But at that time, you wrote. When did you write the book?
I think I finished that in 2012.
Okay. And
Same time I was going through my dissertation work as well, so I was doing a lot of writing. I said, I'm in the mode now. Let's go ahead and knock this out too.
so what was the book about?
Well, it's called A Beats Eating Liz. I have a picture.
Show it to, yeah.
Let's,
That's right. We talked about the title is one of the great titles.
yeah,
First of all,
I'll tell you that story. I'll tell you
yeah,
that
how did you
story.
come up with the
Uh,
title?
Lessons learned in life and leadership. And I can't remember how many chapters we've been having here. There's like 25 little short chapters about little incidents or situations that happened or things that I experienced and what we can learn from it. And so the title, I got a lot of good feedback on that. But the first chapter talks about the concept of it beats eating lizards. And I was in an auditorium in the Air Force. I was being trained to be an Air Force instructor. And we were in an auditorium in Montgomery, Alabama in the middle of summer, very hot, very uncomfortable, right after lunch, worst time to go to a lecture, as you know.
Right.
And the guy sitting next to me, who was in my seminar, he was an Army E8 Special Forces instructor, Green Beret. And, those guys are pretty much competent in the whole gamut of skills, explosive, survival, parachuting, scuba diving, marksman, all that stuff. But he was a survival guy. And I said, I just offhandedly mentioned to him, Jerry, I said, it's really hot in here. This lecture is boring, and I can think of about 100 things I could be doing than sitting here listening to this. And he said to me, yeah, Captain, but it beats eating lizards. Because he's eating lizards. And it just kind of struck me. I was like, he's got a point there. It's all perspective. It could always be worse.
Did you ever tell him? Did he ever find out about the book, or did you
I
know?
don't know. I lost track of him because he was an Army guy, and I really never communicated with him after we left that class. But I hope he's out there somewhere. I'd like to get in touch with him.
Okay, that'd be great. Talk about. I love that how you had the story and then there was a lesson from it. Talk about one other lesson from the book. Yeah, like
Uh,
20. Yeah, 25. Or how many chapters did you have in it?
25, yeah.
Okay, so one other lesson learned, or one other thing that was in the book. Remember?
Well, let me just see. Pick a subject because there's a pretty much a wide gamut of. Um, Here's one. There's a difference between 25 years of experience
Right.
and 1 year of experience 25 times.
Okay.
And I ran into that a lot in the military, but I ran into a lot. I'm a former NCAA women's basketball official and I did a lot of high school officiating and women's college officiating. And one of the things, particularly at the high school level, you would show up to work a game, and a lot of the I'll call them more senior officials. The first thing they wanted to know if they didn't know who you were, you show up to work a game with them the first time, and the first question they asked was, "How long have you been doing this?"
Right.
So, well, I've been doing it 8 years. Oh, I've been doing it 25. So, I basically intimating that they knew more than I did. And I said, "Oh, well, that's good." So let me ask you a couple of questions then. So, in your 25 years, have you read the rule book cover to cover? No. Have you gone to any college camps in the summer? Have you gone to any clinics in the summer to try to get feedback and improve your officiating? No. I said, well, I have, and I'm working women's college right now as well. And I know the high school rules and the college rules. And I go to camps every year and I take a test once a week for my college officiating. So I don't care how long you've been doing it. I may only have 8 years of experience, but it's
Good
real
point.
experience. You've been doing the same thing for 25 years. And if you're not learning and growing and getting better, that doesn't really count as experience. You're doing the same thing 25
Great
times.
point. Um, how long did you do that for?
Oh wow. I started, I think, after I retired from the Air Force, I guess 94. And then I finally quit officiating last year, high school in North Carolina. It's the whole high school sports has just gotten kind of tough to deal with. The fans are out of control, and the kids nowadays have really bad attitudes, and it's hard to find good officials. So you might end up working a game with two officials that aren't really that qualified to be working certain level of games. And if one of you looks bad, you all look bad when you're on a 3-person crew. So I just decided it was not fun anymore. I'd love to still be doing it, but
Now that was you were refereeing basketball, was it? So the other thing about it, it kept you, I guess, in shape too, right?
yes, yes, a
Yeah,
lot of driving and a lot of running.
driving, running. But it reminds me, just curious, change subject. What's your reaction to Major League Baseball changing their whole thing, where now it's computerized? Um, and it could be, as far as I see, I don't see, you don't see, you see it sometimes in basketball, right? When if a shot goes off in time. What was your feeling about that?
In baseball or basketball?
Well, saying both. In basketball, you had it, right? You had some computerized stuff in it, right?
Well, it's not really computerized, but they can go back and look at video, but
Right.
but
Yeah.
only for certain things.
Right.
And that I have a little bit of an issue with that. And if you watched any of the Final Four or any of the March Madness, men or women, they spend a lot of time going over there and looking at that TV screen, and
Exactly.
I think it takes away from the game. Baseball, a little different because it's slow anyway. But I'm not a big baseball fan, but I know I've seen a lot of videos from a lot of games over the past few years, actually, where the home plate umpires are just way off. I mean, way off, where you're like, what could they possibly be looking at? So to have the ability to go back and question a call and then look at it and see where the ball was, I think that's a good thing because the goal ultimately is to get it right. And if you have the technology, they use it in tennis. They have
Right.
the magic eye that can tell where the ball touched the line or not. We have the technology. Why not use it to make sure that we get it right, make it as fair as we can?
Well, your point's well taken. I saw a replay on baseball the other day, and you wonder what the guy was doing. some guy beat a throw to the bag and wasn't even close.
Yeah,
The guy said it was out, you know.
yeah,
Uh, and you wonder, but just almost like you were saying basketball, though, for some reason it kind of, I guess, slows down the game also. You know,
yeah,
you're always looking at replays.
yeah,
And some reason it used to be part of the game, you know, it's almost like part of the fun of the game, you know.
yeah,
It was a human error, just like players can make
yeah,
human errors. And now something about it bothers me. And imagine, I'll be curious if it happens in basketball, if you see the length of it, or even the championship games, if they were
hmm,
longer, I bet they were longer than they used to take because you had to
hmm,
stop to look at replay. Interesting.
yeah,
So basketball, so you were a rep for a whole bunch of years. Then you were telling me off the air, and I want to talk about this as well. It's kind of interesting. You decided to get involved in politics, you know. And
yeah.
was that like a all of a sudden thing, or did somebody twist your arm, or what got you involved in politics?
Well, it wasn't all of a sudden. I had, particularly being a military officer, you're kind of in tune with a lot of the stuff going on in the political environment because it has a big impact in many cases on what's going on in the military. And you kind of need to be aware of current events. So I've always been kind of interested in politics and talking about politics and policies and that sort of thing. Um, I always thought I might like to run for Congress. And when I moved here, I'd been living here for several years, and I just happened to go downtown Brevard one day, and Mark Meadows was in town at a coffee shop in the morning, and I thought I'm just going to go down and see what this sounds like. And the true story, um, he did his little "How Great I Am" speech and all the great things I've done for you people, even though you didn't vote for me. And he said, I guess I have to take a few questions now. And I just thought, okay, you know, what a dumbass thing to say. But he took three questions, Blaine, and I don't remember offhand what the questions were, but I clearly remember he gave the same answer to every question. True story. And the answer was, we're working hard to find conservative solutions to that problem. And that's when I decided to run.
And by the way, that's a hard thing to argue with. You know, how can you argue with it? What a bullshit answer.
It is a bullshit answer. And so that's when I decided I got to take him out. And I looked, there were two people running at the time, and they'd been running for like 9 months. I got in literally 3 months before the primary, and I didn't have enough really lead time to get out there as much as I probably would have liked, but I worked as hard as I could. And I think I ended up with about 26% in a three-person race. And I could offline we'll talk about the problem that the Democrats have in this 11th district in North Carolina. But yeah, it was I really wanted to go after him so bad, and the guy that they nominated had no chance. It was just really sad. I thought I would have given a pretty good fight, but it's what it is.
But to your credit, you were a glutton for punishment because you ran once and then you ran a second time.
Yeah, yeah. I ran a second time for a year. I ran for a year. I got in early. Um, And when I announced in that year, that's when Mark Meadows got out about 3 days after that,
Remember,
right before the filing deadline. And then four other people filed at that time because they thought it was going to be an open seat, which, they should have known better. It's a Republican's going to win. And that's when we got Madison Cawthorn.
you know, right.
Couldn't even beat Madison Cawthorn. And now we can't beat Chuck Edwards. So it's just really frustrating. And I've just I gave it a shot, and they can do with it what they want. They'll get what they deserve. But the issue, I think, particularly in this district, and I'm going to make some people mad, but the Democrats always focus on get out to vote. All they want to do is get out to vote, get every Democrat out to vote, make phone calls, knock on doors. Well, you've got about 30 34% Democrats in our district, and about the same Republicans, and about 36% independents. But they don't go after the independents, and that's what I kept telling them. I have to go after the independents. Well, you can't. No, you got to focus on the. No, you cannot. You could get every Democrat in the district to go out and vote, and you're still going to lose. And they
Interesting. Though. Just curious, since you brought the issue, so how do you go after the independents?
well, there are going to be some independents that are going to lean right. There are going to be some that are going to lean left. But you have to talk to them, and you have to go out and tell them what's in it for them. But you got to go out and try to get their vote, and we're not doing that. We're so focused on getting all the Democrats out. That's not enough. So I went to the Indivisibles. I went to those independent organizations. Said, look, you know, I know you probably don't agree with everything that the Democrats do, but they've got a hell of a lot better idea of how to handle things than what's going on over here. And they're just not doing a good enough job of going after that segment.
So 2 times, and that was enough. And I have to ask you one other thing that I think we share a mutual interest in, and then you're also interested in community theater.
Mm-hmm.
How so? Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I started out. I did some musical theater in high school, and some theater, and then didn't do much of that. I did a couple. Did a little stand-up comedy when I was in the Air Force. Did some emceeing of talent shows and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
a lot of that. But then when we came to Brevard, they had a little community theater there that I got involved in, and ended up did a few performances, and then I was on that board for a while.
And by the way, I feel so bad. I love that theater. It was such a good little theater.
Well, it was, but there again, you talk about administration, and
right.
They asked me to be on the board because I'm not a theater person.
Right.
And then when I tried to tell them the management things they needed to do, they said, "Well, you don't understand. You're not a theater person." I said, "Well, I have a news for y'all. You're not theater people either. You might want to be theater people." But I tried to tell them all the things they needed to do, and they just refused to listen to me. And I said, I can't help you if you won't listen to me, but I'm going to tell you, I'm leaving the board because I can't do any good. And if you don't make these changes, you won't last another 2 years. And I left the board, and 2 years later, they folded.
Yeah, and I used to love going there. Were you ever in any shows?
Oh yeah, I did a number of shows, and then I was on the board in Hendersonville for about a year, and I've done a couple of productions up in Conisty Falls. They have a Conisty Community Theater, something they call it CATS. It's the acronym. I can't remember what it stands for, but I was in a production there. I think I'm going to be in another one this fall up there. Just it's fun. And great people. Conisty Falls, outside of Brevard.
Is it okay? I don't know. It's a community. You have to tell me there's community theater.
Yeah, it's a community up there, and they have a little theater function that they do up there.
Yeah, you have to tell me more. What?
CATS, CATS, Conisty. I can't remember what the acronym is.
I'm not familiar with it. So just yesterday, saw a great show. We saw at Asheville Community Theater. We saw Hello Dolly, and if you ever get a chance to, we just loved it with a great job production.
I love theater. Theater.
We share an interest in that. So
I was lucky enough to go. I've seen Hamilton twice, by the way, which was incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, you'll have to be for a while before you see it in this area. I don't think Hamilton will be in this area. But it's funny you say that because I love theater. I love especially community theater, even more in some respects than professional theater, because you put so much time and effort into it, and it's probably too late. How far are you away? You're probably far away from Mars Hill.
From where?
Mars Hill. Mars Hill.
About an hour.
Because they're doing it, I'm going to be in it. They're doing a production of a Music Man, and it's only for people 55 and older.
No.
I'll tell you about it. I don't know if it's too late to get in it.
I've been to a couple of their events. Yeah, pretty good job they do.
They do a good job, but this production, especially, you'd have a couple of years before you qualified, over 55. But it's just something that a couple of years. Anyway,
I've been qualified for a long time.
Join the crowd. Maybe I'll have to tell you more about that. So let me ask you then. then all these different things. And you mentioned to me off there, you're going to hopefully be revising that book, maybe 55 more lessons you've learned. By the way, all the stuff you've had since, the political stuff, the theater stuff, be a great basis for part two of the book or something.
That's going in. Yeah, the obviously the political and theater stuff and everything came after this book came out. So I've got a lot of that stuff in there about things that happened. And I will tell you the one that probably the most profound one that happened to me, and I'm definitely gonna put it in the book. But when I ran, I did a meet and greet in Mills River
Okay.
one morning actually on a Saturday morning, and I did my little spiel and so on, and then I spent more time answering questions than I did talking because I think that's important for anybody in political office to listen to what people have to say instead of just telling them what they want to hear. So I opened it up for questions. There was a young man sitting in the front row who raised his hand, and I said, "Oh, great!" I was so happy to see a young man at a political event, at a rally, a forum, and and I said, "Okay, what's your name?" He said, "David." "Okay, David, great. How old are you?" "I'm 12 years old."
Uh,
"What's your question?" I'll never forget this. "I don't feel safe when I go to school.
mhm.
What can you do about that?" Still brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah, great question. Wow. But
Still brings tears to my eyes. And that's back in the day when Walmart was selling bulletproof backpacks because of the school shoot, and yet still we haven't done a damn thing about
yeah,
it.
so
Unbelievable,
true.
unbelievable.
See, if somebody wants to get in touch with you after today's show, they want to find out what you're doing or keeping tabs on you. What's the best bet?
They can email me. It's swoodsmall@outlook.com, and I'm on Instagram, Dr. Steve Woodsmall, Facebook, and I'm on Blue Sky as well, Dr. Steve W. on Blue Sky, or they
Did,
can
did
certainly email me.
did that blue sky ever get off the ground? I know it
Oh,
was.
yeah. Yeah,
Is
I've
it?
got over 25,000 followers now, actually.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because the other one is there's another one out there that I tried to get into Substack. Are you into Substack at all? Are you familiar with
No,
that?
because I think you have to pay for that, don't you?
Yeah, well, no, you don't have to pay for it, but if people want to sign up, they can pay. It's a volunteer contribution. But
I'll look at that.
I tried to get off the ground, wasn't interested. But anyway,
Mm.
good stuff, Steve.
Can I just do one thing too? I've got a TED
Sure.
talk out there from several years ago on systems thinking in the pandemic. So they can look up Steve Woodsmall on TED.com. That's a 12-minute TED talk we did up in Lake Junaluska, I think in 2019, uh, about systems thinking and how we didn't handle the pandemic the right way. It's worth a look.
Will there be another TED Talk in the future?
I don't know. They're doing them in Asheville every year, but I
Right.
don't know. I might try to do that. I don't know. I like doing some of that academic stuff still.
In your spare time. Anyway,
Yeah.
Steve, I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. Also, like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. Hopefully, one of these days we'll actually bump into each other in person. That'd be great.
Love to. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me. Been a
Thank you.
pleasure.